All right. I think we are live. You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Our other show's sponsor this evening is the RangeBuddy.App. If you guys haven't checked that out, head over to your local app store, download the RangeBuddy.App. It's a collection of over 130 shooting drills. They are all sorted by the required target type and filterable by the skills worked. So if you want to work on draw to first shot, single hand, strong hand, weak hand only, transitions, grip, any of the skills you want to work on, you could filter them out by those skills. We just launched the community drills feature, so our community members, our users are able to upload their own drills for other folks to participate and shoot them. There's an integrated leaderboard and training session tracker for the drills that you run on there, so you can see how you rank against your buddies. And the coolest part, in my opinion, is the virtual firearms instructor portion of that app. It's like having your own little range friend with you in your pocket. It'll call out random commands for you, give you a part-time buzz. There are shoot or no shoot images, so you can work on some decision-making drills, random move commands, whole bunch of stuff. So that's the RangeBuddy app, available on iTunes and iOS. Today, you can access most of those features for free. Or you can access all of the premium features for a few bucks a month or a low annual fee. But let's get into what everybody is here for. That is to talk about Josh Logan of Guardian Training and Consulting and their use of force simulation course. Your hosts tonight are probably the two ugliest guys in podcasting. You guys can't see that because you're listening to it at a later date. Andy Montoya, myself, Jeremy Gill. Let's get into the show. Josh, do us a favor, because we're not so great at talking and all this good stuff. So introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the firearms training industry.
Oh man, as they always say, that's like telling somebody how a watch works. So I'm Josh Logan. I'm the co-founder and director of training of Guardian Training Consulting. My other co-founder, my wife, Karen Logan. Both of us are retired law enforcement. So started my life 60-acre horse farm. So when people see my cowboy boots, which you can't see in this podcast, it's not because of the Yellowstone effect. I actually rode horses and shot horses for a living. And if you don't know what that is, then you probably watched too much Yellowstone. So grew up there, then moved out to Arizona because of the white stuff that falls from the sky, commonly referred to as snow. And
Okay.
No, that's not. That's good. I've never heard that. That's a good one. No, we're not building a snowman. We're building a snowman. So then we came out to Arizona, and all I wanted to be was an F-15 pilot. That's all I wanted to be. And I went to ASU, Arizona State University, for a couple of years, and realized I suck hardcore at math, like really bad. And my, the teachers always said in my generation, Josh, wherever you go, you're not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket. And now Steve Jobs gave us a calculator in our pocket. But I just realized it wasn't in the cards. I joined the United States Air Force to go see the world, Europe, Asia, and got sent to Minot, North Dakota. If you don't know where that's at, shit is not exotic. The whole thing is, why not Minot? Reason's the reason. On the base gate, it says only the best come north, and the joke is, and the morale stops here. And so I went to Minot Air Force Base, and I did nuclear weapons security for my entire career. So I did nuclear weapons transport. So we transported intercontinental ballistic missiles on the city streets from point A to point B without incident. So for 4 years, I kicked doors, blew stuff up, shot big guns, worked out, eat, slept, and repeat for that. And then got out and joined the city of Minot, North Dakota Police Department. About 60 officers sworn, and I really cut my teeth in law enforcement. Worked there for a couple years, worked active homicide scenes up there. We watched a town go from Mayberry to murder capital North Dakota due to the influx of oil, which then brought the roughneck population. And then in 2011, we had a century flood. So I got to watch the incident command system of the Department of Homeland Security literally get enacted. And then moved back to Arizona, and I joined the Chandler Police Department, the city of Chandler. Worked there for a little over 10 years. And so my entire career, I worked the streets. So it was my 3 food groups were gang members, dope, and guns. Those were my 3 food groups. I didn't work long-term financial crimes or kiddie porn. I literally worked the streets. And then in my entire career, had the opportunity to become a firearms instructor for the state. Worked with the federal law enforcement training centers as an active shooter instructor, and then had to get divorced. Kind of had to check that police block. Get in a critical incident, get IA'd, go through really tough times, to almost committing suicide, to getting divorced, and then remarried. And so then fast forward my career. I met this wonderful woman after I survived the divorce and survived a $4 million lawsuit. So I was sued during my career for use of force incident for $4 million, survived all of that, and then met my current wife, Karen Logan. So my wife is 11 years Chicago Police Department, and then 10 years as a federal air marshal. Met my current wife, Karen, just amazing woman, more dangerous than me by stretch of so I traded a police chief as a boss, and now I have an even more dangerous boss. So she's not only a wife, but the CEO of our company. About 3 years ago, 2020, I decided to make the jump from full-time law enforcement. We started the company about 5 years ago and made the jump from full-time law enforcement to 100% entrepreneurship. And now we own the company 100% of the time. And now my clients wave at me with all 5 fingers instead of just one. And so happier than ever, and get to meet some amazing people along the way, and still teach law enforcement. But now as a consultant, I get to walk in and tell chiefs of police what's wrong, and I don't get fired or internally investigated anymore. So kind of the 30,000 foot perspective of my life in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Air marshals are no joke shooting, man. I did a Dave Spalding handgun combatives there in Tempe, and one of the ladies was an air marshal. I think there was 17 of us, and she smoked us all. She outshot all of us. It was super impressive.
Wait, so. That was Karen.
Was it your wife?
That was Karen. Karen.
She earned the belt buckle.
The belt buckle.
Yeah.
You were in that class.
I was in that class. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh my god.
Yeah, she kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah, that's Karen. That's Karen.
That's
the
cool.
belt buckle's floating around this office somewhere. So, whoa, that is.
Yeah.
Just when you think this industry is big, like you go to SHOT Show, like we've all been to SHOT Show and how big it is, and then you realize all the bullshit of SHOT Show, and the real people that kind of get this industry done. It's not really that. It's not really that big.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's pretty often. I'll go to classes all the way to Georgia, and then I run into somebody that I know or I've seen online or something like that. But it's there's a story I always tell in our classes, because new students, they'll come and they're having trouble stuffing mags, and I'll walk over there and I'll pull the Upalula out of my pocket and I'll show it to them and everything, and they're like, "This thing's so cool. Do you use it?" And I said, "I use it all the time. There's only one time where I was embarrassed to use the Upalula. I was at a handgun combatives class, and I'm over there with my little Upalula stuffing mags, and here comes this little short air marshal lady walking right next to me, and she grabs a handful of bullets. She just starts stuffing mags, so I'm like slowly like hiding my Upalula and start stuffing my mags with thumbs. So it had to have been your wife. So yeah.
So Andy, can I make you feel better? Feel better? So Karen, we did a class just recently, and she was loading a lot of magazines, and she has had a lot of problems with her right thumb. And she went to the doctor, and she's like, "I have trigger finger." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "No, they call it trigger finger, but it's on my thumb." I'm like, babe, you don't push the trigger. It's like, no, that's a medical condition. So if it makes you feel better, she broke out a purple Opalula just recently, and she got her man card punched. So
Awesome.
she's using an Opalula. So you can get your man card, I guess, redeemed. I guess that's the best.
Tell her I said thank you. I don't feel bad
Yeah,
anymore.
well, this is a small world. Holy shit.
That's
She's like
funny.
this. I gotta break out this, and I'm like, babe, it's all right. It's all right.
It's totally
make it purple.
fine. Yeah.
Bedazzle it, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, right. Awesome. So let's move over to Jacob No Fuchs Given and tell us about yourself, Jacob.
Oh, we're gonna have so much fun with that last name, aren't we? Okay. So my name is Jacob Fuchs. I am a student of Josh Logan, and I'm also his media production specialist. So I get to not only interact in the class and get to participate and understand all the fundamentals that he teaches, but I also get to capture it on a professional media sense. So I own a production company. I do photo, video, graphic design for firearms companies, churches, small businesses in the Arizona, Phoenix area. I'm happy to be here.
Man, it is a small world, and if that's a pretty cool story. Andy does tell that story though about how he was embarrassed in the Opalula, because I can't use them. I'm slower with an Opalula than I am with just stuffing mags the old man way.
Well, for the record, the first time Karen and I met, we fell in love over a Glock 17 Gen 5, and so I bought one, and the brand new Gen 5, and she was a SIG girl for all her life. She carried SIGs and Berettas in Chicago, and then when she went to the Air Marshal Service, they carried the 357 SIG, 229, and so when she first shot it, she actually shot better than me. And for Andy's point, like, shit, your man card got punched, but then I'm like, that's insanely hot. I dated it, and then I eventually married it. So, which I regret, because I have a woman more dangerous than me. So,
well,
small world.
Take a little bit of weight off of your shoulders.
Yes.
Protect me.
Yes.
Let's talk about the class, the use of force simulation course. It's a class that when I first reached out to you, it was super interesting and intriguing to me, because it's something that I've always wanted to do. And in the back of my mind, there's been this, because I've seen the old systems, right? Like years ago, I was looking at a couple of the old systems, and it would just they seemed kind of janky. And then somewhere about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, there was a big leap in technology, and I saw the quality of the video simulations just kind of take this leap. Talk to us a little bit about what this class is and who it's for. Sure,
great question. So our use of force simulation class, if you look at it from a perspective, like, we don't do linear training like Guardian Training Consulting. We're more of a concierge-based service than linear training that the local range teaches, or whatever the case may be. So you can really start wherever you like. So if I had it my way, if I could create the linear training, it would be use of force simulation class, our Arizona concealed carry course, and then another use of force simulation course. So look at the use of force simulation course, whether that's an Arizona concealed carry course or just a CPL class, or wherever you got your law and legal information pertaining to use of force and concealed weapons training. This is the practical application of said training. And so we put people in real world scenarios. So just like you said, I started with FATS, and then, with the firearms training simulator, then went to Milo, and then worked with a couple other companies, and watched the progression from CGI, which is okay. And that's our video game world. That's the, computer graphics. And so it's okay, but the problem is you can't see the micro expressions in Call of Duty. And so that's where video scenarios have really come into effect, because now we're putting essentially a face to a face. It's a person. And what we're creating is an augmented reality scenario. So we're still in this world, this real world, but we're augmenting it with a scenario on a screen. And so you don't need any training to come to this class. Honestly, we love the people that have no training because you truly get to see the deficiencies in a safe environment. So not only from a physicality perspective, but also from the fact that everybody's going to make mistakes on this simulator. I think all of us can agree, and I may be presumptuous between Andy and Jeremy and Jacob, but we all have training in the fact that if we had $1 for every time we made a mistake in training, we'd still be doing what we're doing, except it would be in another zip code, more like Barbados, and I'd be scuba diving with Karen in the afternoon. So we want to make those mistakes in training because we all know that we cannot make mistakes in the real world because there's a lot worse things than death, and that's called prison. And so we put people in real world scenarios ranging from robberies to home invasions, active shooters, realistic scenarios that a concealed carry individual could find themselves. And so we set that up. So how we quantify acute stress in a very non-invasive way is they walk in, we take their pulse with a simple pulse oximeter just to get their resting heart rate. And so every aspect of Guardian Training Consulting's training is quantifiable. Everything's quantifiable. So from accuracy to time to performance, everything, which I think is, not getting on my soapbox too much, but that's what's lacking in our firearms world. People think if they stand in a half of a telephone booth at an indoor range and shoot a humanoid-sized target with no time, no stress, that somehow they're proverbially called a gunfighter, which is problematic at best. I'll just leave it at that. So we put them in a real-world scenario. How we quantify true immersion in that scenario is we put them in the scenario, and then after the scenario goes down, I then tell them, explain to them before we start the whole class is, you do not have the right to have an attorney, and you do not have the right to remain silent in this course. Any question I ask in the after action, you will answer, right? So then I ask one question after the scenario ends. Tell me what happened. And it's not the opportunity to tell me what you could have, would have, or should have done. It's tell me from beginning to end what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. And that's their opportunity. And while that's happening, I'm actually putting the pulse oximeter on their finger. And what I'm actually, the desirable outcome in our training to create immersion is to have about 2 to 3 times the resting heart rate. And it happens. And people are like, well, hold on a second, it's a video game. No, we create an immersive environment where they have to interact with that individual or individuals in that scenario, and they have to respond. And our goal is to create an amygdala response, right, to that passions, the fears, desires. And our goal is for our students to respond, not react. Response comes from the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, the front part of our brain, where our knowledge base is, where our IQ is, and our problem solving, critical thinking skills. But our goal is to put them in the amygdala part of the brain, the middle part of the brain. So when they're in the amygdala part of the brain, you see some kooky stuff. I think we've all seen it in simulation-based training. You're like, how many times do you tell them to drop the gun? 14 times. 14 times. And so we tell people it's as close as you can get to a real critical incident without being in a real critical incident. I mean, Jeremy, you and I, we can go outdoors right now. We can go out to the street and shoot each other with live ammunition. We could do it right now. We can do anything once. Super realistic stop the bleed class. But Google reviews tend to go down and client reacquisition is tough. But we can't condone that. So how do we simulate the real thing while creating a positive learning environment, and also an environment that is learning but doesn't demean, demoralize, or degrade? That's what I know. That's a long-winded answer to a very simple question, but our course is multifaceted in that world.
So I've had the opportunity to do the FATS training and also Milo, and both of them had different gear. And so I want you to talk about a little bit of like what gear you use specifically for your version of training, And also, I want to ask you the question: when I did it, it was in a civilian police academy for both our police department and the sheriff's department. So when you run this, do you have civilian based scenarios, or is it still kind of based law enforcement style?
Great question, Andy. So we are partnered. We purchased a simulator from a company called TI Training. They're based out of Golden, Colorado, an exceptional training company. We have over 250 scenarios in our simulator loaded right now. And by the way, our simulator is completely mobile. So we can put this simulator up. All I require to bring our simulator to you, wherever that shall be, is all I need is a 20-foot minimum, 20-foot by 20-foot room. I'll call it projector dark, so presentation dark, and requires electricity. That's it. So I can fly with my simulator. It comes in a big SKB case. So TI Training and TI Outdoors is the manufacturer of our simulator. So whether it's FATS or Milo, these are different companies. What I love about TI, and I'll just dote on them for a minute, is the fact that they have seen the light on civilian training. I love teaching law enforcement. We have 18 curricula that are certified by the state of Arizona, AZ Post, Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training, and including our use of force simulation. So we actually have this course certified for law enforcement. And obviously, when I teach law enforcement through our simulator, we talk about Graham v. Connor, Tennessee v. Gardner. We talk a lot about that case law, which is our bread and butter. But as we well know, and I love my law enforcement, but they want Cadillac services for Honda Civic prices. The civilian side of the game is, most of our civilians and our citizens typically encounter a simulator like we're talking about in the Citizens Academy. And the purpose of that Citizens Academy in the simulator is to enlighten the citizen on how difficult these decisions are, these life or death decisions, right? Graham v. Connor, for example, the essence of Graham v. Connor, officers must make split-second decisions based on rapidly evolving intense circumstances, in which they must base those decisions on the totality of said circumstances, in which hindsight's not 20/20. That's U.S. Supreme Court case law. Where we lacking in the civilian world is we send our students into CCW classroom, which, like our CCW class, is a majority law and legal seminar, like where you can and can't carry, who can and can't shoot. We don't even have a shooting portion because we want to really focus on the law and legal, then digest it, and then come back for firearms training. Where we lack in the firearms world, and no disrespect, is the bridging the gap, right, between like our firearms training. Like I break down our gunfighter into three processes: the knowledge transfer, which is our concealed carry course, the actual marksmanship, right, learning how to line up the sights, or what I call creating a symbiotic relationship with a gunpowder activated hole poking device. That's what a firearm is, and then the decision making. And we rarely do that in our world. So that's where we bring law enforcement, literally technology that's typically law enforcement and military, and we bring into citizens. So we bring real world scenarios. At no point, none of our scenarios include a police car arriving on scene, and then we have to kind of mold it and say, well, you're not a cop. They are direct from the source, concealed carry scenarios. We've worked right now, working with the United States Concealed Carry Association, the USCCA. So I'm a certified instructor, but also a training counselor for the USCCA. So I certified my instructors through the USCCA. They actually have 8 scenarios right now they've created with TI that are straight civilian scenarios, not a single law enforcement. So we have, on the order of the 250, I have on the order about 120 that are just straight CCW, John Q. Public. And because like you said, Andy, like in the past, we've had to try to create law enforcement scenarios and contextualize them into civilian. So I have about 120, give or take, right now, and they're constantly updating. That's the other good thing about TI, is they're releasing more scenarios by the month on different CCW, like John Q. Public, responsibly armed citizen scenarios instead of you're a police officer responding to an active shooter, and let's somehow contextualize it into a CCW. That doesn't happen with that, which I think is cool for TI.
That's awesome. I want to kick it over to Jacob and get your perspective on that class and a couple of those scenarios. So walk us through what the first half or I guess walk us through what you experienced running a couple of those scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the unpredictability of the class is what really sets it in stone. Because I've gone to a ton of different rifle, pistol, shotgun, CQB classes, and it's all the same stuff over and over and over again. So the one thing that kind of swept me away with the simulator is the ability to not know the outcome. Josh provides a really excellent ability to test the limitations of each of his students. So if there's something that you're better geared toward, he'll up the ante for you. At the beginning of the class, I kind of walked in and was fairly confident of myself, as any 23-year-old guy should be. And that was ego checked really fast. I was responding to a situation that I was supposed to be ready for in my head, but wasn't in real life. And that gave me a really good perspective on what I should work on and how I should carry myself better. So there's a lot that this class goes over, more of the internal personal aspect of myself and going over fundamentals of firearms safety, marksmanship, just as a general broad class. It's good.
Do you feel like the scenarios, and I want to ask this to you, Jacob, and then I want to follow up with Josh on it.
Sure.
One of the, and again, this is coming from a like an ignorant perspective, right? I haven't gone through any Milo or FATS, or I haven't gone through any like, use of force simulation. One of the things that I guess I'm having an obstacle for is how believable those scenarios will be for me in the moment. And I understand that there are some tips and tactics that the instructor can do to kind of get that stress inoculation and make the brain think that it's actually experiencing what's on the screen in front of you. But what was your thoughts and your experience on that? Did you find yourself responding and like you were stressed out, actually, like you were believing the scenarios?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a level of stress that kicked up. Again, with that heart rate monitor, I saw a visible jump in my physical heart rate when I was shooting. The thing for me is, as a film production guy, there's a lot of things that I can pick out for video production. But there's a responsibility of the student to immerse yourself in that situation. Even if you're going into a simunition course, right? People are wearing masks. There's a level of disbelief in a situation. You have to suspend that. And it's really easy to do with how Josh teaches it, because he puts you in the right mindset to say, this is your life. This is what you're doing. This is how you're protecting it. So if I have any advice, it's more to understand why you're there and suspend your disbelief for the sake of the training. Now, that being said, once I'm in the situation and I've fully immersed myself, I have no problems believing that this is real life and this is very close to what would actually happen.
Man, it's the minute you said, simunition, because I've taken a simunition course a couple times, and it immediately brought back, I'm like, yeah, you big dummy. Like, the guy that you're going up against is wearing a mask and you're running around with airsoft. Like, you know that this isn't a real scenario. But at the end of that deal, like, I was winded, I was stressed the hell out, and I was surprised that my body reacted the way that it did. So Josh, I want you to kind of follow up on that. Do you find some students that are kind of skeptical about the whole process, and how do you overcome that to really get them to buy into the scenario and not just treat it like a video game?
So, yeah, great question. So, Arizona is a constitutional carry state. So, the biggest question I guess cognitive dissonance that we get is, well, why should I take an Arizona concealed carry course when I don't need a permit to carry a gun. So I tell them, first and foremost, God forbid you learn something. The Roman Stoic Epictetus said it the best. It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows, right? And so, I get, especially cops, but some guys, there's let's lack of better terms, FUDs, right? They walk up, they size me up, and they go, "What am I going to learn from you?" You know what my answer is? Apparently nothing, with an attitude like that. And so I prescribe, and all of my instructors prescribe, to the concept of always a student and sometimes a teacher. And our environment that we create is an environment of respectability, right? We respect where people come to us, regardless of where they're coming from, right? So if you want to come in with an attitude, that's fine. Like, and I'll just play along with you. Like, I'm not the type to take you head on. Like, if you feel that you can master this day one, hour one, then do it. Let's put you in the simulator. And so the big way I contextualize it is, we just had a client attend a concealed carry class approximately about 3.5 years ago. And that's the only class he attended, was my concealed carry class. No use of force simulation, none of that. And then about 2 years ago, he was involved in a road rage incident and murdered another individual. How do I know about that? Is because the investigating agency was my former police agency. And in his post-Moran interview, he said, "Yeah, I did. I was trained by this guy, me." In his post-Moran interview. And then I was subpoenaed about 20 weeks ago to a murder trial. And I spent 5.5 hours testifying in open court what we teach. And so one of the best criminal defense attorneys I've ever been against, it was my 6th homicide trial I've been in, first as Josh of Guardian Train Consulting. And it's amazing when you have a detective that you've known for 15 years. And I go, "Hey, what's up, brother?" And he goes, "Hi, this is Detective so-and-so of the Chandler Police Department Robbery Homicide Division. I speak to the owner of Guardian Train Consulting, Josh Logan." And you hear, there's 2 sounds that you hear: absolute silence from my mouth, which you're starting to realize takes a lot to shut me up. And 2, my sphincter muscle tighten up, because I'm like, holy shit, like, what is going on? The only bright side of it is he was convicted of manslaughter, but I became an expert witness in this state. So out of that case, I walked as a lay witness, and I exited in being qualified and voir dired as an expert witness in the expertise realms of firearms and use of force. So now I have the ability to walk into a classroom. It's not a pretentious thing, but walk in and say, and based on my expert opinion, and it's not some YouTube expert or self-proclaimed expert, I've been declared by the Maricopa County Superior Court in those worlds. And that's a new service that Guardian Train Consulting is going to be providing, specifically me. So when I explain to people that, listen, we're going to put you through world scenarios, communicate with the scenario, because I can change different aspects of said scenario. So a lot of the immersion is created by the instructor, where we set parameters. I guess that's the best, lack of better terms, where we set parameters. Listen, communicate with them, because I can create different branching options. TI gives us that. So I explain to people that if you're effectively communicating with this person, I can give you a desirable outcome like compliance. If you're not communicating or ineffectively communicating, I can give you an undesirable outcome like hostility. But understand, can you effectively communicate and still get a bad outcome? Yeah, welcome to shitty people. Like, it's just the way it is. And I explain to folks that a lot of these scenarios, there's no good or bad outcome. A lot of these scenarios, you have the choice between a bad outcome and a worse outcome. There's no good outcome. And so when they realize that, and also we have 5 people at a time. So the other thing is, we have 5 people in the same room, and everybody gets to watch everybody, because we have that many scenarios, and we don't have to like hide people and then do the same scenario. And there's so much downtime. So the 4 other people that are watching are being the strong silent type and shutting up, but watching the person go through that scenario, because they can learn just as much sitting on the quote unquote sidelines as the person going through the scenario. And obviously there's performance anxiety. There's that's all put into it. So then we give them the scenario. Now I try not to front load as much information, because if I say, hey, Jeremy, you're going to go in the scenario and somebody's breaking in your house, like, you're going to be like, let's fucking go. This is what we trained for. But if I say you woke up to a sound and it's an unknown sound, that's a realistic scenario you could find yourself with. Now you're charged to investigate that and then go. And a lot of people that have no training, they're like, what do I do now? I'm like, you got to figure it out. Like, I'm not here. Like, this is the real world. You can't afford me to live at your house. Like, so I'm not going to be here. And so when they go through it, that's when we start to see the heart rate and you see a physiological response. For those that have seen it, just like your instructor and your simunitions watched a physiological response. The problem with simunitions, no disrespect, is you're wearing a mask, you're wearing the Michelin Man suit, and it doesn't create an immersive environment. Literally, somebody can show up to our use of force simulation class in flip-flops and board shorts. Hell, show up in your chonies. It gets weird, but you want to be real. Like, putting on your plate carrying night vision devices in the middle of the night, that's not real. You're gonna have your chonies on. You're gonna keister stash a magazine, and you have your Glock 17 in your hand. That's the real world. So we can create that environment with the use of force simulation class that otherwise you can't do with simunitions.
That's why I never borrow magazines from Jeremy, because I just never know where those magazines have been. I'll say that right now.
Prison pocketing.
Yeah, Josh must have watched my video on how to keister a mag.
Hey, Jacob, over to you.
Fanny pack and underwear.
Hey, don't underestimate the power of a fanny pack, brother. That thing's powerful.
Yeah. I retired mine. Well, I had the Verdicts SOP tactical fanny pack that I had been wearing for I need to check it out, a few months now, but I was doing it so I would be able to speak from a position of experience when I'm talking about off-body carry, about the pros, the cons, the limitations, how to overcome that stuff. And the zipper stopped working. It so I was getting ready to do some dry fire practice, and I go to rip open the cord to get that one rep in there, and the zipper, and it got stuck halfway through.
Wow.
So it tore, the fabric tore on the outside of the zipper, so it was getting hung up on it. And part of the problem is the way that I had my Glock 48 in there. It was, the back plate was up a little bit higher, so it was putting some. So I'm sure it's user error, but
still technical limitations, and trying to manage those are difficult as it is. So
I thought you were just dry firing so much, Jeremy, that you just wore it out. That's what
shit. No, man, I don't dry fire nearly enough. Back to you, Andy. I stepped on your question.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I wanted to hear about your fanny pack and your chonies. So that was important. So over to you, Jacob. How many hours is this course? And then my second question to that is, think about one of your scenarios that you may have struggled with that you came out becoming a better civilian concealed carry holder.
Sure. So the course is, I get a little bit of special access because Josh and I get to hang out for a while and play games all the time, getting to be his media guys.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I get to.
In your chonies.
Well, yeah, chonies, of course. But one of the situations I came out better with was more of the decision making, right? There's shoot, no shoot. And when you're under tension, it's hard to identify, was that a badge? Was that a gun? Was that a cell phone? So there's lots of scenarios in there that when Josh is in the control seat, gives you the option of, oh, that's a gun. It's time to identify that target and realize that it's a threat. And that's something that I was not fantastic at before this class, but humble brag, I'm a little bit better at it now.
Yeah, I mean, the after action is really the key. That's the thing, is like, we've seen a lot of people, they going through the scenario is one thing, but so I explain to people that I'm going to be asking questions to you that I have asked in the past as a police officer. And so they tell the story. And so, for example, they'll tell the story and then they'll go, okay, how many rounds do you fire? And they go, well, I think 5. Okay. Are you thinking now or are you thinking then? And they go, I was thinking then. So now you're telling me you're not thinking now? And they're realizing how dangerous this line of questioning that I'm bringing forth to them, and how important it is to understand your rights without myself giving them legal advice. But guess what? I've partnered up with a local criminal defense attorney named Brandon White, who served over a decade as an Arizona Department of Public Safety trooper. So he not only has the law enforcement experience, but also the criminal defense experience, where we'll be doing with Jacob at a lot of different law and legal seminars. Ask the expert and ask the attorney. And so when I do that line of questioning, they realize, wow, how much their eyes saw, but their brain did not cognitively process, right? And it literally happened seconds ago. The great part is, after we get through the line of questioning, I can pull up the entire scenario in real time, frame by frame. Everything is time stamped from the time that they first show their threat to the time that and every shot is time stamped. Every shot is located on the screen. So when people go, I'm shooting this guy, but he's not going down, I'm like, you know why? Because you didn't freaking hit him. That's what happened. And so it shows that. Also, there's a camera pointed at the participant. So they call it the TI training calls it the picture-in-picture camera. So think of, the small screen in the top right-hand corner can be them, and the scenario can be the big screen, my 12-foot wide by 8-foot tall screen. Then I can swap it, and I can swap screens, and I can showcase them. So when people goes, I didn't do that, that's not what happened. So TI calls it their picture-in-picture. I affectionately call it my bullshit camera. When somebody goes, I didn't do that, I'm like, and roll the footage. There it is. Like, don't take my word for it. Here's videographic evidence of your response. And when I explain to folks that if you use force out and about, like my road rage incident individual, there were 4 different cameras being shown on that incident at 2:00 in the afternoon. If you don't think videographic evidence is going to be a part of your defense or your prosecution, you have another thing coming. And so it's, I guess, to your question, Jeremy, is that's what creates, I guess, the reality of this is the totality of it, is the oh shit, like, this isn't easy. It's not. Like, for all of us that have done some type of reality-based training, it's not easy. And so it's 2 hours. The way we schedule it is 2 hours, 5 people, and everybody gets a scenario. But then when we do custom classes, whether it's a law enforcement contract or if we travel around the country, we did one recently in Florida, so we'll go there. And so it's really based on what the client needs. That's kind of how we work it. It's a custom. We're the concierge-based service. We're not this is the menu and this is what you get and you can't throw a fit kind of concept.
So Jeremy talked earlier about us taking some reality-based training, and the one thing that I think when we first started being students in those classes, I struggled with, because it seemed like, of course, everybody wants to shoot each other, right? Because that's the fun part, right? But the problem is every scenario ends up somebody shooting and somebody shooting. Even when you're not supposed to be shooting, somebody's shooting. And it's hard to explain and hard to get into their heads that thought process of, hey, this is real life, quit shooting each other, act like adults. Do you see that in your class in the beginning of scenarios where everybody wants to kind of automatically go to the gun, or do you do it a different way to try to eliminate that?
Great question. So I explain to folks, like, I'll use the shoot house example, right? So when I worked as a police officer and as a firearms instructor, what do we call the houses that we shoot in? Shoot houses or kill houses, right? I try to explain to my officers, and I try to explain to people, it's a cognitive processing house. Now, that doesn't sound sexy. That's not Instagram sexy. Because what does everybody want to do in a shoot house? Fucking blaze, right? And so what I'll do for cops or for people that go and shoot through shoot houses, I will give them what they want. Like, I will give them all the targets inside the shoot house, all shoot targets, and they get just to burn every target down. Then what I will do is I will do a cool down phase. And what is all the guys after they shot? Woo! Fist bumping and chest bumping and monosyllabic 4-letter words and glottal sounds, and they sound like cavemen. Then I'll say, guys, load up 10 rounds on each magazine. And then what I'll do is I'll have an instructor inside the house turn all no-shoot targets. Then what I'll do is I'll have them have an instructor with a safe blank gun in the back, and I go, hey guys, bring it in. What we're going to do now is we have a report of an active shooter at this incident. You're going to do an active shooter response. So then I'll have the instructor shoot the safe blank in the back, and then I'll go, 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 go. And then they'll how fast do they go into that shoot house? Like 300 miles an hour. And they will move and they will shoot faster than they can cognitively process. So when they're moving faster than they can cognitively process and they're met with an unknown stimulus, they shoot the unknown stimulus. And this is what happens. They move through a room and you hear pop, and then they say shit. And then they go another room, pop, fuck. And so then you keep hearing them, even if you're not watching them, you're hearing them making mistakes, right? And then you shut down the simulation, like for example, Sims or live fire in that regard. And then you go, all right, who did it? And they go, and they start looking at each other and go, all right, cool. Let's just block ammo. Everybody pull ammo out of their magazines and we'll find out who it was. Or you can just dispense with the bullshit and just tell me who it was. And so when people go, well, Josh, you manifested that environment. No, like, let's be real. Like an active shooter incident, you're going to be up here. You're going to be at the top of the top, and you're the one, and the student is the one, the officers are the one that had to control it and throttle control it. Just like in our simulation training. So the problem that I see with force on force is it becomes a very expensive paintball game. That's what it comes back to. And no matter how good of role players you have, inevitably they go off script and they get shot, because everybody wants to do simulations until you get shot with one. And then you're like, oh, that fucking hurt. And then you shoot the other guy. And then you shoot the other guy. And it becomes a very expensive paintball game. And then communication through the mask is difficult. What the simulation does from a continuity of training perspective is I can put the same person, and if we do like a person after person simulation, is I can control every parameter of it, and it's easily to testify to, right? So I put Andy through this simulation, right? He gave me these commands, and this is the branching that I took. But then Jeremy went through this simulation, right? And he responded a different way, and I gave him that other branch. It's that, for me as an expert, that's easy for me to testify to. But if I go, Jeremy reacted with this role player that he knows, and it became a paintball game, that doesn't sound well. But then Andy puts to this and he responded a different way, and it became a successful training operation. It's tough to do that. And so with the simulation, it removes all of that. And then you're not walking away looking like you got hickeys all over your body as well. And so it's easy to replicate similar scenarios as well as controlling those scenarios to make a positive learning experience. I hope that answered the question, Andy.
No, it did a very good job of doing that. Hey, Jacob, I want you to queue up that footage that you have. You have a great video that I want to have you present in just a minute. And while you're queuing that up, I want to talk a little bit about the RangeBuddy app, just because it sounds, for me, I've been a firearms instructor for 12 years, somewhere in that area. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I realized it's not, taking classes. I would show up to a class and it's like, all right, stuff your mags to whatever. All right, we're going to get up here. We're going to do 2 rounds on this, 3 rounds on that, whatever it is. And even in those classes where there was some sort of decision making that was going on, you still had an idea. All right, I'm going to shoot 3 targets, 2 rounds each. And I was like, man, that's kind of a disservice, right? Because gunfights are random and violence are random. Shouldn't firearms training be random? And I've been, about 3 years into working on a patent with this freaking training or this target system that I have. And then I was like, man, what is something that I can do that everybody can kind of use? It's accessible for everybody. And that's really where the RangeBuddy app was born from. And it was the idea of this virtual instructor on there. And specifically the shoot or no shoot images, where I can have my iPhone or I can have an iPad out in front of me and I can work on dry fire. Or if I set it off to the side of me and I'm not a crappy shooter, I can work it in live fire. And I can tell it, hey, I want to work shoot or no shoot images, and I want it to display an image for a quarter of a second, a half a second, or whatever it was. And it would randomly choose an image that was either a shoot or a no shoot, followed by a par time buzz. So I could really begin to work on reacting to a visual stimulus instead of the go command or the beep command. And a couple of the images in there, there's a guy holding a gas pump. So they're in a brief duration, you could confuse it for a gun. And hey, did you see what you actually thought you could see, or did you see what you actually thought you saw? Was it a gun? Was it a water gun? And then I was like, man, how do I kind of bring this to where more people are going to get sucked into the virtual instructor component? Because it doesn't sound so sexy. I'm gonna work dry fire with shoot or no shoot images. I just want to get out there and blaze through some ammo. So I was like, man, maybe if I pump it full of a whole bunch of shooting drills, that way it's an actual reference tool for folks. And, so that's really where the RangeBuddy was born for me. It was, this is something that I was like, man, I would really appreciate if this was out there. So I've been working on it for the past year or so. And then it has, like we talked earlier about the move command. So if you want to work on some movement stuff, it'll randomly give you a move command. And it can use your phone's accelerometer, so you can put it in your back pocket and it will detect when the movement slows down or stops, and it'll give you another random command. And the cool thing, when I take it out to the range and I use it, a couple of my targets are shoot or no shoot, right? So I'll write a G on there, a uppercase G, a lowercase G, and then maybe the uppercase G is the shoot for this string of fire, and then the next string of fire it's a no shoot. So I personally think it's a great tool. Got some great feedback. Got a couple thousand users that are using it. The free version gets you everything it'll get you the first 3 drills in the month's featured drill, the community drills, and then the really only premium features are the virtual instructor, and then the rest of the shooting drills. I think that everything else is unlocked for you. So check it out on the RangeBuddy app. Android and iOS. And Jacob, you have that video queued up, man. We will get into that.
So the biggest question I get asked is, why should I take this course? This course, of all of our different curriculum, opens people's eyes.
The adrenaline pumping when it's your turn and it's your turn to shoot. Oh, it's so top of the line.
Our use of force simulation class puts ordinary citizens in extraordinary circumstances, ranging from robberies, home invasions, all the way up to active shooter incidents, where they have to make split-second decisions in rapidly evolving intense circumstances where lives are literally on the line.
The technologies were amazing. I've never seen anything like this before.
I've done a lot of range training, so obviously this really helps bridge the gap between what could happen out in the street or at home.
There's one thing to think about what you were going to do in a real-world situation. There's another thing when you know what you're going to do. We're here at TAC Hub, and we have the awesome opportunity to bring our mobile simulator made by TI and powered by the United States Concealed Carry Association, or the USCCA. We are blessed to be partnered with TAC Hub, as well as the United States Concealed Carry Association, for over 700,000 members, training those individuals in responsible gun ownership and having the ability to bring state-of-the-art technology that TI training provides in real-world scenario training.
Man, that's a badass video.
Thank you.
He's pretty good. He's pretty freaking good.
The thing about it is that I'm there to capture the class. I mean, I'm there to just indulge and understand the feeling of the entire class. And when I'm sitting there and experiencing what the students are experiencing, that's what I get. I mean, that is what it's like to be in that class.
What are some obstacles that you've seen other students have in this course?
I'm not sure if I've had many obstacles seen. More on the fact that Josh is able to address them so quickly and help them get over those obstacles. If there is any obstacle, and this is really, really nitpicky, it's their willingness to get into the situation. Like we said, what do you call it? Immersing themselves in the situation. They say, "Oh, I couldn't find myself in this situation. I couldn't do this," until we bring them to the realization that this is real life. Like, these are real situations you can find yourself in. But other than that, I haven't seen any problems from the students.
Josh, what do you think the big aha moment is for somebody who's never, I don't want to say never, it's your Arizona concealed carry permit holder, and I'd imagine that person's a little bit more keyed in Arizona because it is a constitutional carry state, but somebody who's gone out there and sought the training that they don't necessarily need, what are some of the aha moments that they have after taking this course?
Wow, it's as personal as each other, right? It's as personal as a fingerprint. I've had people that realize that maybe a firearm is not for me, right? Maybe I'm just not there yet, or maybe, you know what, this is a huge responsibility and this is not for me, all the way to somebody that goes, well, you know what, I do want to continue this world and I need more training. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And so let's go to more firearms training. You need marksmanship training because you didn't hit your target and there's liabilities that are being thrown down range. So we get to really find the deficiencies in somebody's training in this class more than any other class that I've ever seen, while still being safe. I mean, again, so like even the guns that they hold in their hands are real Glock 17s. So when somebody holds in their hand, they're like, this feels like a real gun. I'm like, because it is. But it's been retrofitted with a barrel system that shoots infrared laser instead of live ammunition. So there's physically no way that we can load, feed, or shoot live ammunition. So as I always say, it's Alec Baldwin safe. It's not too soon. So, but we get to do all of that training in a really safe environment from a physicality standpoint. And so the aha moments come from them realizing, like, part of it is, I don't know what I don't know. And you use the word ignorant, Jeremy. And, that word ignorance in this world that we live in, specifically the American world, the American, language, ignorance is something bad. Like it has a negative connotation. But the actual succinct definition of ignorance is you don't know what you don't know. Right? And what the scariest people that I've seen is the people that are misinformed. The amount of Google and Wikipedia attorneys that I've arrested in my police career is astronomical. I know my rights. I'm like, you're about to be educated. I've had people in my concealed carry class going, I don't agree with this. I'm like, you don't have to. This is the laws. Like, you can live inside or outside the confines of said laws. Somebody comes in my house, I'm just going to blast them. No, you're not. First of all, it's not that easy from a perspective of using deadly force. And second of all, if you have the attitude in court, you're going to prison. Like I don't mean to sound like a dick, but you're going to prison. What'd you feel when you shot that guy? Recoil. Next question. Dude, don't say that in public. Like, keep that to yourself in your mirror. And so the aha moments come from people that either have no knowledge of the world that this world is, or they have preconceived notions that this is what I'm going to do. The Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The perceived perception that they're going to perform in these, and they get a aha moment going, man, maybe I need to pump my brakes. And guess what? I'm preaching from a pulpit that I've stood there, right? I've done a lot of stupid things in my police career. I've been to the hospital because all I could have done, I was legally, morally, ethically allowed to be where I'm at, but it wasn't a good tactics-based decision and I ended up in the hospital. So when I explain to folks that here's a situation, here's things that could have gone better, right? There's no pass or fail in this class. So a lot of people go, well, I failed that. Like, there's no pass or fail. It's a knowledge transfer class. And if I'm just teaching you from a perspective of not only the legalities as it's written in Arizona revised statutes, but also from an experiential perspective, right? And so when, like I explain to people, you can ask the Pope about sex and hit the Catholics' view on sex, but the Pope should have no experiential knowledge of sex. And then you can ask Hugh Hefner when he was alive what his views on sex are, and he had a lot of experiential knowledge on it. So what we do is we kind of meld the two of the book and the experiential knowledge. And when the people come out, they go, what we find is people are empowered coming out of our class because they have an idea or a better knowledge base of how they're going to respond in those situations. I can tell you a majority of people are like, wow, I'm better prepared now than I was before. And I explained to them that just understand the liability perspective and the requirement for performance was the same before you walked out here. Now you just have a better working knowledge of it.
This sounds like, you're running 2-hour blocks of instruction. Do you find that students are wanting to come back and take this class a couple times throughout the course of a year?
Yes. So I have like a handful right now. I have a handful of students that, like, I'll use Jacob, for example. I will put Jacob's decision-making against some of the best decision-makings under stress people in the country. Like, I know that's a very pretentious or presumptuous thing to say, but I can tell you right now, you use the word stress inoculation. I like the word stress acclimation. I am acclimating them to violence. So the biggest hurdle that we see in this training is people freezing in scenarios. They're presented a problem, such as somebody pulling a knife or a gun or whatever, or just getting loud, like people getting loud and using profane language, and they freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. And the freeze aspect is them being presented a problem they don't have a solution for. It would be the same thing as putting a Goodwill Hunting problem on my board over here and going, Josh, solve this math problem that only 3 people in the world know, and I'm not one of the 3. Like, I'm not going to start writing. I'm going to go, dude, Jeremy, that's messed up, bro. You put me on your podcast and you're asking me to solve a problem that 3 people, I'm going to freeze. So that's what we see. But then when we explain to people that you can acclimate yourself to it, right? Acclimating yourself to violence, like Jordan Peterson said, is you shouldn't be incapable of violence. You should be capable of violence, right? And hold it back. You need to be comfortable with violence. So when people see these body-worn camera footages of police officers shooting citizens, and people go, that doesn't look good. And I go, it shouldn't. It's called violence. When does it ever look good? Right? Now we have to say not what is right, but what is reasonable. That's the aspect behind it.
Sorry, I was just making a note of that. It should. It's called violence. I like that. 1 second. Let me write down that timestamp so I can cue it up later. Where do you think? I think.
Oh, he's pontificating. I can hear.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask. I was like, why aren't more people receiving this training? And I know it's because there's it's not readily available in that, or it's not widely known that this is available, because I think the people that have experience with it are through the Citizens Police Academies. And then the initial investment that an instructor would have to take on to start offering this is, for a lot of folks that are out there running, a self-defense training or like a firearms training business, it's a pretty big barrier to entry. Where do you see? So I had a note I wanted to question or ask about is virtual reality, and is this something that, I don't know if you've seen, there's what the hell is the name of that company?
Axon?
No, not Axon. And I don't know if it's a company or if it's a guy that was working with, not working with.
Chimera. Chimera.
Yeah, Chimera. Yeah.
Chimera. Yes.
Where do you see, like, in your opinion, how far away are we from VR replacing, I guess,
augmented reality?
Yeah,
augmented reality. So that's a great question. So I've seen Chimera, the Chimera XR. Don't quote me. I think that's what the company's called, and Chimera is going to come after me. They're like, you idiot, you don't even know what you're talking about. But so I think we're pretty close, in my expert opinion. The hurdles with VR is the fact that you have to create these environments. So you have to create the environments, you have to create the people, and then the tools that are in your hand don't seem realistic. So I've seen, I may or may not have seen the first, without violating any NDAs, but I may or may not have seen the first VR simulation prototype, and it was the paddles that the Oculus, similar to what the Oculus use. But the problem is what's in your hand is not a gun, and it's these paddles, and what we really want to create in reality-based training. If you want to use, Ken Murray's concept of reality-based training, a book that every firearm instructor that I require is Shooting at the Speed of Life. That is a must-read for a book for an instructor. Savage, his name's Ken Murray, works the Reality-Based Training Association, and so the problem is it creates a disassociation when you have something that's fake in your hand. So if you put, like, my blue guns, I have 3D printed blue guns for my simulator. When you hold it in your hand, it doesn't feel real. When I put that Glock in your hand, people are like, holy shit, this feels real. I'm like, because it is. And so we want to create as much as we can to that world. So yes, the price for entry, the barrier for entry for instructors from a capital perspective, money perspective, is extremely high. It's not cheap. I mean, we're looking at mid 5 figures on that end. I'm not going to quote TI because I don't want to play that game, but probably mid 5 figures on that, just as a basic scale. And then if you go to a multi-screen system, you're looking at 6 figures to mid 6 figures. It's not cheap. Then you have to have, like my instructors, the simulation training it's not scripted. Like, the after actions are completely unscripted, right? And so there are certain training organizations that have tried to create playbooks for instructors, but I can tell you right now, if I was attending a class or my students were attending a class and a friggin' instructor was reading from a playbook, I'd be like this, then just give me the playbook. I don't want to hear you. I'm not paying you for your expertise. You're just playing on the playbook. So it's difficult because we all know in concealed carry classes, the rabbit holes. What if those leprechauns come from that? And like, there's no easy way of doing it. So your level of mastery in use of force knowledge has to be at a mastery level. Like, it has to be up there. And of the 10 instructors that I have 2 that I think right now could do it. The rest, I just can't send them to a use of force simulation class to do it, because it's not that they're bad. It's just they don't have it cold. Like, you have to. So, like, when I set up my simulator, I have 4 jobs. I have the actual technician of setting everything up. I have the IT guy. I'm the IT guy of knowing if there's something wrong, how to fix it. Then I have then I have to run the system, the knowledge of the hardware and the software, how to run the simulations, and then I have the instructor on how to do it. And so it's not easy, but if it's done right, we've had huge success for it. And there's probably a handful of instructors out there that are doing it right now for citizens that I know of. Could be wrong, but I'm working with TI very closely and the United States Concealed Carry Association. As a United States Concealed Carry Association, we're really pushing that boundaries of what training can be offered in the USCCA and across the country.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And you're absolutely correct, because there's still, we've been doing it for years, and every now and then there's somebody in class that asks a really good question, and you're like, how come nobody's in the last 10 years has asked that question? Because that's a very good question to ask. And I can imagine when you're in a scenario and then you're going to have everybody, well, why did you shoot that guy that pulled out a cell phone? Oh, well, and then, everybody's going to have a justification for why they did it. And if the instructor isn't cued in on how to sort through that BS and really get that student to understand that, hey, you made a poor decision under those circumstances. And yeah, I understand why you made that poor decision. But do you understand why you did it, and what can you do to prevent that from happening again? Because, we talk about a case that happened here in New Mexico. There were a group of teenagers that were going around and breaking into vehicles, breaking into vehicles. And under one of those instances, a homeowner was shot and killed. And we talk about, hey, what can you do at 2:00 in the morning if somebody's breaking into your truck? Well, you can go out there and you can verbally confront them. Hey, what are you doing? Right? You can go out there with your gun and say, hey, what are you doing? And if that person points something at you and you think it's a gun, yeah, you absolutely can shoot and kill that person. But when the sun comes up, it turns out you shot and killed a 16-year-old kid that had a flashlight in his hand. It's going to be pretty hard to convince a jury that they would have acted the way that you acted under those circumstances, even though you were justified in doing what you did on paper because of reasonable. Doesn't mean the jury is going to see it that way, right?
The question you have to ask yourself is, where's the safest? If you're using the example of somebody breaking into your truck, right, at 2:00 in the morning, the question you have to ask yourself is, where is the safest place you can be at 2:00 in the morning if somebody's breaking into your truck?
Yeah, and that's where it comes back to, right? There's nothing in your vehicle. One of the things that I want our students to walk away with is a real profound understanding that if you're not willing to die for something, you shouldn't put yourself in a position where you might have to kill for it. At 2:00 in the morning, somebody's breaking into your truck. If you're not willing to die for something that's in your truck, don't go out there and confront those teenagers, because what could happen is you can go, hey, stop breaking into my truck like this guy did. And then you take 3 or 4 bullet holes and then send your mask, and your kids wake up to a dead father in their driveway.
Or the question that could be posed in this situation is how do you articulate fear if you're going out there and confronting that person? That's right? That's predicated. So let's use the predication of fear, right? Because everybody goes, I was in fear of my life. I was in fear of my life. Let's predicate said fear of having to shoot somebody because they were a deadly force threat. Let's predicate that fear on the fear that you were going out there. Listen, I have an F-350 Super Duty truck that I just bought a couple years ago. That's my pride and joy. Like, you'd break into my truck, like, I'll go straight freaking redneck on your ass. But also the fact remains is there are worse places than death, and that's prison. And how do you think they're going to treat an ex-cop in prison? Let's just say I'll be the little spoon every time. And I'm not a small dude. So, like, and people are like, wait, you mean to tell me you're going to let people break into your car? I'm not inviting people to break into my car. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not giving up my life, my freedom, my lifestyle that I built with my own 2 hands for, those scumbags. Yep. No other way of saying it. Shitbirds, whatever you want to call it. Like, not happening. Yeah. Not my monkeys, not my circus.
Yeah. Not my pigs, not my farm. I went to
right?
I had my truck was broken into a few years ago, like a week before Christmas, and I posted a picture of it on social media, and everybody was like, oh, they're lucky you didn't catch them. And I'm like, if I had woken up and realized somebody was breaking into my truck, the only difference that I might have pressed the key fob on my alarm and I would have called the cops, right? Like that's the only difference. I would have gained a position of tactical advantage inside my house in case they decided to burglarize. I don't keep a garage door opener in my truck because I don't want somebody to break in and have access to my home. But if they decided to, maybe they were going to try to come into my house and help themselves to what was inside. But I'm like, I'm not going out there to confront them. There's nothing in my truck they got a first aid kit that they had no idea how to use, and my prescription glasses case. That's what they got. It's like, it's not worth it. So,
and they don't know how to read, so they're just going to make flyers with your with your stuff. So like, again, like that's the thing. We can agree if somebody's in your house, we can agree a lot of things have failed. The likelihood of somebody stumbling in your guys' house is pretty next to zero, right? We can agree, and that's where a lot of people go. Like, well, if somebody breaks in my house, I'm like, whoa, let's back up. If somebody's in my house, you've earned that right. Like, you've bypassed, usurped, broke through, and I can articulate it to the sun comes up how you got in my house. So my level of force is going to be higher because I can articulate said force, right? I don't leave, like you said, I don't leave my garage door opener in there, because if they break into my house, they can get in my garage, which they potentially get into my house. Just don't do it. It's that stuff. But we want to focus on the gun because it's Instagram sexy, sadly. Like shooting around cars, doing low light stuff. I mean, Jacob is amazing at making our classes look sexy, like pornographic, sexy, good stuff. But a lot of it is the knowledge transfer, which it's not as sexy, but I think it's critically important.
Man, I want to give you guys the rest of the evening back. Before we do that, I want to make sure that we gave the course its due respect. And I always feel lazy asking this question. But is there anything that we should have talked about with regards to this course that we haven't gotten into yet?
Mr. Fuchs?
I think, Josh, you've covered it with complete and absolute mastery, as always.
You jackass, using my terminology now. Whenever I ask the class, I go, does anybody have any questions? And everybody kind of looks at each other like, so I guess I just covered it with absolute mastery. You jackass.
Yeah, sort of. That's what the J stands for.
I know, right? Exactly. There's worse things I've been called. Don't worry about it.
Me too.
But no, I think we've covered it. I mean, it's the biggest thing is it needs to happen. And it's training that otherwise is not out there. And I've had like one of these subject matter experts for law enforcement firearms training in the state of Arizona has contacted me, and it goes, dude, what you guys are doing for citizens, nobody's doing, right? And even with law enforcement, like I've worked with him a lot, and he was one of my mentors, and now he's in the private sector because he retired, and he's like, bro, like what can we do? I'm like, let's build this. Here's where Guardian stands in this world is I can say I hate this industry. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I'm sorry, Andy. I really do. I despise this industry because there's a bunch of pirates, cannibals, and we tear each other down so bad. It's not even funny. I've worked with some amazing people that have taught me, and I've worked with some really shitty people in this world that have taught me. And you're not competition to me. Andy's not competition to me. The people that are here are not competition to me. The rising tides raise all ships. And so if we can offer that training, and it can supplement your guys' training, and it can supplement or whatever the case may be, it can come from a different perspective. Let's do it. We need to come together, because the other side of the aisle, not from a political standpoint, but the other side of the aisle pertaining to gun rights, pertaining to Second Amendment rights, pertaining to be honest, law-abiding citizens, they are working harder than ever and more coordinated than ever to take us down, right? The people that don't believe in our American way, the people that don't believe in our Second Amendment rights or our way of life are working together better than ever. And just take my word for it, and we need to do it. So if there's anything Guardian Training Consulting can do from a B2C perspective to consumer, or a B2B perspective, I only have 3 hard no's: illegal, immoral, unethical. I'll straight up hard no you. Usually the crazier the idea, the more fun it will be, because now I'm an entrepreneur. I can say what I want, when I want, how I want. And my boss is in the other room, and she's more dangerous than any police chief that I've ever encountered. And Jacob knows that. But the fact remains is if there's a problem, we can find a solution. Asymmetrical problems, we can create asymmetrical solutions. That's what we do.
Muted.
Yeah, muted.
Damn it, I was unmuted the whole time, and then I muted myself. I was going to plug the USCCA, because when we first started talking about this, one of the things that I had looked into is you had actually ran this or the video simulator at one of the big conferences. So there are probably listeners out there that are wondering how they can receive this training. And I would say, if you're in the Arizona area, absolutely. It sounds like it's not going to be too far of a stretch for you there. But also be sure to check out the USCCA conventions as they come up, because it sounds like, and I might be incorrect with that statement, but it sounds like this might be some training that's offered there. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, so we exhibited at the United States Concealed Carry Association Expo. Jacob was with us. We presented there, and let's just say we're working with the highest levels of the USCCA, the highest levels in the training department and the USCCA as a whole, bringing innovative training. So I have almost daily meetings with some of the leadership there, and we're progressing training. It's a symbiotic relationship with Guardian and USCCA. We have the ability to pivot because almost on a dime because of how small we are, right? We're not the juggernaut of the USCCA. And so, we're going to be doing the USCCA Expo next year. It looks like it. We're going to be at SHOT Show, working with TI and them. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. Just join our newsletter or check us out on our website and or shoot us an email. If you call us, it's going to be me. And if I don't answer, I'm on the range or I'm doing that, shoot me a text or email and we'll do what we can to help you.
Perfect. And that's gtctrain.org, gtctrain.org. Andy, any parting advice or final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think my final thoughts are just another great podcast, and I appreciate both of you guys coming on. Josh, it's really good that I don't know if we're just really good or it's just we're really lucky to be able to get firearms instructors constantly that just have the great mindset of what you talked about today. Kind of the thought process of, this whole gun fighting shit Instagram thing is super fun, but there's a bit of reality to it, and nobody wants to think about that until, unfortunately, sometimes it's too late. So I think everything you gave us today was great, and so I appreciate that. Jacob, thank you for coming on and giving us your insight. Your video was awesome. Where can we find you, by the way?
Thank you very much for the compliments. So you can find me both at my website, jinfinitemedia.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, which is my primary social media. It's at jinfinitemedia.
Yeah, man, that was your videos are freaking top notch, and you got me over here. I've been telling Andy, I was like, man, I got to get out to the range. I got to get some promo videos together. And I would love to say that you inspired me to do that, but I think I'm like, fuck, man, I can't do that with an iPhone and a GoPro.
No, you can't. Do what you do best and outsource the rest. That's what I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see